It's not the who, it's not the when, it's the why. For nearly 10 years plus, these two individuals, in the case of one of them since 2002, have been spreading vile and nasty stuff on the internet about people with no evidence. One of them is now sitting in a cell for over 70 days, and the other one is still pushing out vile nonsense. Now, is Kim Picasio the first victim? No, this lady is. This lady is Christine Marcy, a mother and a grandmother and the sister of Phil McConnell. When you go on the internet and type her name in, you will find so much disinformation, some of the most horriblest things you'll ever see. A virus that was spread like a plague on the internet, created by one man. I'm going to show you that evidence, and I'm going to show exactly who done it. I'm going to show that one person was reluctant in that. And how do we know that? Well, because this letter that Merck Witness 1 produced backs that up. It says there, he is easily led. And that's the whole point. And I'm going to prove exactly why. That the one that's not in a cell is the real reason we have the problem now. Like I said, it's the why. The ego. In that letter, it talks of his ego. What I'm going to show you here is his Twitter page. 334 tweets, 61 of which are all about how many new followers he got. Obsessive. That 1 in every 6 tweets is about new followers. He was driven by his image, his persona, one could say. But what we've watched in the last year, especially in the last few months, is the complete and utter disintegration of Phil McConnell in real time, to why he sits behind bars now. Root causation. Follow everything back to where the possibilities could start. So here we have the bankruptcy court. McConnell, Phil and Allison, dated May the 30th, 2003. Here is the actual documentation, and it's the order denying confirmation, chapter 30 of this, heard May 27, 2000, objection by NWA. So in other words, McConnell and his wife at the time were trying to take on the company. As you can see, his income was 190 to 200,000 K per year. Dated 30th of May 2003. So he borrowed 200,000 and a further 50,000 on a home equity loan, second mortgage. So there is a contention here with the actual money that he borrowed from NWA. And this is obviously going to be interesting for some people to read, so what I'll do, I will link this below so you can read it for yourselves. But more importantly is what actually happened from the objective of this is that despite all of their pleading, the basis of the foregoing confirmation of the debtors' proposed plan dated May the 9th, 2003 was denied. So they were actually denied by the court on May the 30th, 2003, their first thing. Here is the actual appeal, which was dated on November 19th, 2003, and it was filed on 30th December 2003. And again, it's this appeal from an order from bankruptcy court dated to denying confirmation of Chapter 13 plan proposed by Phil McConnell. So Phil McConnell is trying to wangle his way out of something here to do with the debt that he owed to the NWA. And as we go down, again, this will be linked below so you can read it at your own perusal. So accordingly, this appeal was also dismissed. So not only was he dismissed on that, he was dismissed on the other. Now this, I think, is a tipping point. The second part we'll go into and show what happens now. So we know that in 2003 he had that situation. Now, did that play on his mind 2004, 2005? Did that cause any side effects, pressure on him? This is all important questions that have to be asked. So why are we looking back at this again? Because This holds a lot of information in it, and it's very important. So here we have Mr. McConnell's employed as a pilot with Northwest Airlines. In November of 2006, he went on sick leave. Pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement between Northwest Airlines and its pilots, Northwest Airlines could order a pilot who was on sick leave for more than 60 days to submit to a medical exam. The collective bargaining agreement provided. So in other words, here's the agreement. If the company has reasonable cause to believe that a pilot has developed a medical impairment to his ability to perform its duties between the routine medical examinations required by the Federal Aviation Administration, the company may require said pilot to submit to a medical examination from a non-AME medical doctor chosen by the company. The company will be entitled to submit to the medical doctor a written explanation or the circumstances giving rise to the request for an examination, and or require that the pilot submit to an examination by a non-MAE specialist recommended by such doctor. Paragraph B should not preclude the company from requiring a pilot to submit to a medical examination under the following circumstances: application for disability retirement, initial captain checkout, election for continuing flying as a second officer beyond the regulated age, and, well, you can read it for yourself there. So there is the actual thing here, but this gets more interesting because here we have, in January 2007, after Mr. McConnell being on sick leave for more than 60 days, Northwest Airlines ordered him to undergo a medical examination. Mr. McConnell objected to taking that exam and he sought assistance from ALPA. Mr. McConnell contended that Northwest Airlines lacked reasonable cause to order such a medical exam. Despite his objection, Mr. McConnell reported for the exam on January the 31st, 2007. After the exam, Northwest Airlines directed Mr. McConnell to submit to an additional examination by a neuropsychologist, Dr. Elliott. Now that's very important. On March the 1st and 2nd of 2007. This is what this is all about, people. Because now it's going to explain even more as to the why. So Northwest Airlines wrote to Mr. McConnell that due to his failure to attend the March 1st and 2nd appointment, Northwest Airlines removed Mr. McConnell from sick leave status effective March the 2nd, 2007, pending Mr. McConnell's compliance with the medical examining requirement. They rescheduled the appointment with Dr. Elliott to March 26, 2000 instead of attending the rescheduled appointment. Mr. McConnell retired on March the 13th, 2007. So Mr. McConnell refused to go and see the neuropsychologist. Why? Mr. McConnell decided that he wanted to grieve his removal from payroll effective March the 2nd. So in other words, he's playing the game here, people. It's all about litigation and everything else. He's playing a game. But it gets better. Mr. McConnell did not receive any directive or direction to see Dr. Elliott that he learned at March first appointment via March 13th. So he's denying that he ever got any information. But this is the bit that really should show that he is a compulsive liar. When Mr. McConnell claims he never received written notice on March the 1st and 2nd appointment with Dr. Elliott, the records show that Mr. McConnell actually knew of the audit exam and the scheduled dates. Mr. McConnell noted in February 6, 2007 email, "I am being sent to LA to see a neuropsychiatrist." So he lied about it. Here we have, in 2007, a letter that was written by Phil McConnell to the Coast to Coast. This is a place that Mr. Hawkins frequented often. And he sent his bio there. And you also hear at the beginning part about the newspaper article, which is in an earlier video, which you can read for yourself, which shows quite clearly he had a totally different opinion to what has been pertained. He's talking about this. So he's promoting himself. He's selling himself to these people that he's some expert. But I'm not interested in that. I'm more interested in this paragraph here. On December the 4th, 2006, I called a medically retired UAL 77 captain and chatted regarding the fraudulent bankruptcy involving UAL. I called him again December the 5th and again December the 6th. With 3 days of trust, I offered to join his cause as an expert witness on 911 and bring the issue into a court, so when the UAL and BR is reviewed, there would be collaboration testimony from another angle. Dan H., the United guy, said that the attorney on the case wants to stay focused, but that if I was seriously working on 911, I should call David Hawkins. So on the 12th of the 6th, 2006, Dave and I were introduced via email from Dan Hanley to David and I. So Dan Hanley was obviously in contact with Hawkins regarding the situation of all of this. We'll get more into this because it's really, really interesting because it explains so much that was going on at the time. But there's another bit here. In discussing this investigation with my sister, who serves as number 3 to Janet Reno as number 1 at the DOJ, where she knew she couldn't get me off the trail, she suggested I contacted FBI Director Robert S. Mueller. So here is quite a clear example that Phil McConnell is still talking to his sister. There is nothing going on here. He has trust with his sister. Now, why is that? Well, when we go back to this one again on 2010, we go down and a bit further down. There we go. December the 4th, 2006, Phil McConnell called a medically retired United Airlines captain. And again, it says the same things, but missing out, obviously, about the medically retired bit. But here also it talks about the email. But if we go to Dan Hanley's page here on Pakistani's 9/11 Truth 2015, who is Phil McConnell, it talks about DC-10 captain and the whistleblower, but also Custodian should be friends since 2006. So what is the issue here? Well, this title gives you a clue to this. Medically grounded pilots fight back in the courts. Or in court, sorry. Shortly after Continental Airlines pilot Newton Dixon complained about the same lack of training and pilot fatigue that led to the fiery crash of Colgan A flight. So this guy is another one of these groups. But he was sort of accused of having epilepsy, which he disputed. But here comes down to this bit. In the same federal courthouse where Dixon's appeal was being heard, another judge was considering a lawsuit filed against ALPA by former Navy Top Gun pilot Phil McConnell, who claims he was also forced out of his job at Northwest Airlines, reporting illegal aircraft modifications as he's required to do under federal law. So this is starting to make me question something. What is going on here? Update. FAA is still ignoring the warnings who the aviation subcommittee won't call to testify. Who's not on the witness list? Captain Dan Hanley, who's medically grounded. Captain Newton Dixon, a former continent of thousands of experience, who is medically grounded. Captain Phil McConnell, a former Northwest Airline pilot, 23,000 hours, blah, 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 who was medically terminated. He retired. So how was he medically terminated? Or was he medically terminated when he was with Kazakhstan Airlines? I've been writing to them to try and get answers on that. There's a lot of questions on this paper that should really make you start thinking, what's going on here? So we know for 2003 we had the bankruptcy. In 2006 he was told to go to see a psychiatrist, but he refused to do it. He refused to do it because he knew. But let's go to Dixon a minute, just to prove that what I'm saying is factual, because here's the legal documentation of this guy and the situation that happened at the time. Petitioner, then a pilot for Continental Airlines, began initial training on March 21st, 2004 to upgrade to second-in-command pilot or first officer on the Boeing 757. As a only first officer, the thing. So, but this is the bit I'm more interested in, about the fact that he went to London. But here it goes, it talks about Miss Myhill excused herself to the restroom and suggested that the petitioner wait for her on a nearby sofa. It is undisputed that, after standing, petitioner fell and injured himself. When Miss Myhill returned from the restroom, she observed a crowd of people around the petitioner who was lying on the floor. A restaurant employee called emergency medical services to report that the customer had fallen and was shivering. Because the employee did not speak English well, a second person spoke to the EMS reporting that the customer was bleeding from his nose and mouth and that his eyes were vacant. Paramedics arrived at the scene approximately 12 minutes after the phone call. They wrote in the report convulsions, fittings, shivering, etc., etc. You can read this for yourself. I'll link it below. But it all ties in to the questions. Big questions. There's a pattern, a behaviour here. And when we break down and we look down for root causation, we see through the timelines that McConnell was quite in a difficult place. Like I said, he hadn't seen a psychiatrist, so how was he medically grounded? He said he was medically retired. Did he know whatever he has, or whatever it was, would disqualify him from flying? And if so, that would explain probably why, in the time he was on downtime on sick leave, that he was trawling the internet looking for answers or a way out of his predicament, which is where he come across Captain Dan Hanley. And through carrying through Captain Dan Hanley, then he came across David Hawkins. And this is where this gets more interesting. When our paths crossed on the 12th of the 6th, 2006, David said something to the effect of finally. I asked what he was referring to, and he said that he had been looking for an airline pilot or fighter pilot from the US who had knowledge of the true Hollywood production of 911 for distribution by the mainline media and was open to working together at Hawk's Cafe. He said he had felt like it was his birthday. I told him to think more like Christmas because I was an either-or pilot. I was both. The ego of McConnell is there for you to see, but also the fact that Hawkins was desperate to find a pilot for his theories. And also the fact that Hawkins had managed to rope in Neil Slade on his crazy idea to create a film, because Neil Slade was looking for somebody to do a film and Hawkins latched onto him. Now he had a pilot. Now he could go forward. But there was somebody that could be a problem, a fly in the ointment. Knowing Hawkins' methodology, this is what we're going to explore in the next episode.